I think it'll be the more remarkable to all of us, and also to Marty, of course, if I tell him that last night we, towards the end of the meal, I don't know how we tumbled into it, or how I tumbled into it, but I tumbled into saying that the society had got very hard, and we had got used to the kind of stonewalling that we began to come across in Nixon's era, where you remember Haldeman and Ehrlichman were saying, no, this isn't so. And they would just, what the media said was, they would just stonewall. They just, no further. You can't have this information, and we have nothing to say about it, and this is our interpretation of it. And of course I suggested that this had in fact been further developed by the present government in the way that it said, we're successful in Iraq, we're successful, the war is going well. And we all knew it wasn't going well. And it seemed that we got used as a society to saying black is white. And the more often you say it, the more eventually you'll come to believe it, just because you'll be overwhelmed with the repetition and the frequency. And I was suggesting that it had entered into our ordinary conversational style, because more and more you had shouting matches on the television, where you had people who just talked over each other. And indeed, it had become, I thought, a trick for getting the viewers to stay with the program, because it was so exciting. They were shouting at each other, and there was a battle on here, and it would be interesting to see who wins. And so we had got used to people talking at each other. And of course I said that I found 2 weeks ago, I just decided the only way I will get this person to listen to the rest of my sentences if I keep on talking even after they've broken in on me. And so I started to do that, and I thought, this is terrible. I am wrong to do this. Whatever is happening, that's not right. And of course I suggested that it was very easy for us who were out in the middle of the public all the time. It was very easy for us to subtly drift into their method of dealing with each other, and for us to bring that into our own home, into our own sanctuary, and that it was important that we did not lose the fragrance of Jesus' presence, which I suggested, of course, was present often in the old way we had of conversing, where you would be speaking and I would listen to you, and then you would actually give me a gap there where then I could speak back. And so we'd go back and forward like ping pong, and it was orderly, and you were able to concentrate on what you were saying. And I suggested that it really is important that we do not let the spirit of the world overcome us, rather than us overcoming the spirit of the world. And of course I think everybody realizes that we had that conversation last night, and of course I had no idea what the next verse was about. Of course I hadn't actually looked at the next verse. And so it was, it was all the more just a little word from the Father, I think. Yeah, I don't want to overinterpret everything, but when things like this happen, I tend to think, oh, well, you can't say coincidence, but could it be that God knows? And of course the next verse is Ephesians 4:29. Let no You can see why I hesitate, because it is so startling. Let no evil talk come out of your mouths, but only such as is good for edifying, as fits the occasion, that it may impart grace to those who hear. And so, Yeah, well, sure, just coincidence, but that's coincidence. Let no evil talk come out of your mouths, but only such as is good for edifying, as fits the occasion, that it may impart grace to those who hear. And of course it brings before our minds the whole ministry that God has called us to with each other here, where our conversation and the way we speak to one another would be a means of conveying grace to each other and actually building each other up. Because it is quite interesting. You see the phrase, but only such as is good for edifying. Well, you probably don't know it because you don't know the Latin word for building, but edificio is the word for building. And of course you can see turns easily into the English word edify. And so edifying is not, as we might think, educating, not as is good for educating, but only such as is good for building up, building each other up, as fits the occasion. And as fits the occasion is actually in the Greek pros, and then the word for need, for the need. So building each other up just as we need to be built up, suiting it to each other, to the very personal need that a certain person has. And part of what God is saying to us is that He is able to use our conversation with each other to build up each other, to build us up in the weak points that we have, and make us strong, and to speak particularly to those points. And of course the most important part is, let no evil talk come out of your mouths. And it's the word pass every, let everything that comes out of your mouth be free from any evil. Let it all be for building up each other, just in the way we need, so that grace is imparted to us. And Barnes, elaborates it, and sometimes I read to you what the commentators say, just because I want you not just to be dependent on what I think or what I'm saying. And of course the commentary emphasizes, the original translation, let no evil talk come out of your mouths, but only such as is good for edifying, as fits the occasion, that it may impart grace to those who hear. And then the ordinary King James says, let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth. And let nothing that comes out of your mouth be corrupt. And of course he points out, corrupt means bad, decayed, rotten, and is applied to putrid vegetable or animal substances. Then it's applied to a tree that is of a useless character, that produces no good fruit. Then it is used in a moral sense, as our word corrupt is, to denote that which is depraved, evil, contaminating, and may denote here anything that is obscene, offensive, or that tends to corrupt others. And I'd like to go on record right at the beginning, and then you all can apply it to yourselves, But I actually was rather, I think I would say God spoke to me clearly, dear lover, through Sandra, And I certainly remember the times when she would say, that we should speak good things to each other, and we should build each other up. And she would joke me when I was negative and critical. And it certainly came home to me that I had all, you always have good reasons for it, you know. I thought, this will waken Lucy up, you know. This will enable Piggy to know what she's doing wrong. Or this will laugh Colleen out of her foolishness, you know, because I was brought up in 18th century study of 18th century English, and of course Fielding, Smollett and Sterne and the essayist Lamb and the Hazlitt were all very good on satire, the use of satire, you know. So satire is to laugh people out of their vices, and so I had all kinds of good reasons for it. But the result was I was sarcastic, or you can call it ironic or whatever, and I would have all kinds of reasons. Irish people, why say the thing ordinarily if you can get a joke out of it, you know? And that was it, you know. It's so boring just saying the thing. Why not make it funny? And it was all right as long as it wasn't hurtful or burning or critical. But I certainly saw in Sandra's, I thought, Sandra, you're more Christ-like than I am in this regard, because I am critical in my words, too often critical and harsh, and that's not right. So I became aware that there was the corruption in your language can be very hurtful and unkind and not like Christ, and can put you right in line with that piece that we read, you know, does a spring give forth sweet water and sour water? It can't, you know. It's either one or the other. And the verse, out of the fullness of the heart the mouth speaketh. And Irini would say, yes, well, you wouldn't say it if it wasn't in your heart. Well, I thought, no, it's not in my heart. I'm saying it for other reasons. But I saw, yes, but you cannot use the arms of the flesh to bring about spiritual change, and really only Jesus can do it. So I think I saw very clearly that if you want to allow Jesus to use you and to minister life, your tongue does have to come under the control of his living heart. And I'm very aware that everybody can take time to change, but you'd better see a change soon, or you wonder, is the person really ready to do what Jesus asked them to do or not? So I was very aware of that in my own life, but I think it's something that we all need to look at and listen to Jesus about. Because it is true, our language and the way we speak to one another and the way we care about each other or love each other or despise each other comes through our words. And so God is saying very clearly to us, let nothing corrupt come out of your mouth. Nothing that will tear a person down. Nothing that will make life harder for them. And I can see that. I didn't know that any of you ever felt this, but I now know that at times, maybe all of you have felt at times left out of the conversation. I, of course, have often felt it, because there have been times when I have not been as lively in my own physical life as I was before. And I've certainly felt how lonely it can be when they seem to talk past you or not include you in the conversation. But I think some of you have also been in situations where you thought, oh, I'm at the end of the table here, or I'm over here, and really nobody's talking to me, and I wish somebody would talk to me. And I think it is possible for all of us to feel that in different ways, to a greater or less degree. And I think what this verse is saying is God wants to commit and to transfer grace to us through each other's conversation. I remember it was very, and maybe your mums and dads taught you, or your teachers did, but it was very clear to us, you know, both through teachers and through our parents, that of course when you met a one person, or you met two or three people, or you were at table with people, your job was to take note. Is this person in part of the conversation? Is this person really enjoying themselves? And it was just good manners that you would talk to everybody in the group. You wouldn't settle down and just talk to one person, but you would engage everyone in conversation, and you would make everybody feel part of the friendship. And it seems to me that's part of what God is saying to us here. Let our conversation be such as, actually, one of the commentators says, such as will please people. And make it such as it gives. Let your conversation be such that it makes the other person's life happier, or better, or easier, or more relaxed. In other words, it's really a way of expressing love to each other. This whole wonderful gift of conversation that God has given us. That our words can actually express Jesus' love and care to each other. And obviously, and I thought this was good. I think I could see it from some of Sandra's comments, that our task is to encourage each other and to build each other up and to make each other stronger. And I can see that often I'm strong on pointing out to you what is wrong or what needs to be corrected. But really the beauty of Jesus is that he imparts a command to us, but imparts also a sense that we are able to obey that command and that we can do this. And it is an upbuilding experience of strengthening the other person. And it does seem, if you say to me, don't you think it can be a bit naive, because you can be ignoring very obvious things that other people are doing wrong? Yes, I think it can be, and I do think you ought not to step back from, in a loving way, explaining what is not being done properly. But I would submit also that a lot of negative things can be fixed just through a person being encouraged to grow strong in the other things, in the other parts of their life. And so often the wrong and the negative can fall away simply as the other person grows up more and more into the fullness of Christ. And that there probably is far less danger of doing harm in building up and encouraging a person rather than in pointing out all the time their negative things or the things they're failing in. So it seems that Jesus has a beauty for us in our conversation that actually will make life enjoyable for us. And I don't know if we can each one remember the situations when we've been most uncomfortable, or the situations where we felt most talked about or most criticized. But whatever those situations are, you can see the many opportunities where we can make life happier for each other, or easier for each other, or more light-hearted for each other. And probably it all gets back to two things, love and faith. It probably gets back to, do I really love this person? And do I really want the best for them? And do I really want them to be happy, even if I myself am unhappy? Do I want them to be happy more than I want my own happiness? And then secondly, a real faith that our Father has in fact seen all these things. He has seen them all. And he has put them all in his Son. And he has dealt with them all there. And he will manifest that in His good time. And our place is to have confidence and faith in that. And not to be impatient because it's not going at the speed that we think it should. So it does seem to me that the conversation that is upbuilding is one that is filled with faith and with love. And I would say to you all, what you already know, there is nothing of either in most of our society. And our society is now built really on self-destruction. Undoubtedly, if we keep on yelling at each other the way we're doing, and we keep on talking against each other, really it results in what Marty was saying to me. Well, our society seems to specialize in looking at the problems, saying they're there, and not doing anything about them. And it seems that that's what we're about. We talk at each other, and we talk through each other, and nobody listens to anybody else. And so we really never solve anything. We just keep talking at each other all the time, and talking against each other. And part of it is, too, because the mind is becoming increasingly darkened, so that there's little discussion now that goes on. There's even with the dear candidates, they talk about discussing the oil problem or discussing the housing problem, but nobody really discusses. They just throw opinions at each other and keep throwing them back and forward at each other, but nobody really gets down to saying, this is the issue, and this is what we have to deal with. So that at the very moment, the New York Times is full of the truth that the government has just managed, not quite, but it's almost at the point where it's ready to pass the bill providing money for the people who are facing foreclosures, except that the foreclosure number has now doubled and trebled. So it's way beyond what it was originally. And these particular arrangements that the Congress is passing will not deal with those. And so there'll be another 300 million will come online this present year, and they won't be affected by the changes that are being made. So the society itself seems to still be involved in talking at itself and at each other, but not actually discussing things. And I think the same can be true in Belfast. I suppose that's why it's so important too, not only in our conversation, to talk sensibly and thoughtfully with each other about things, but then to step by step follow up on those decisions. And what is so mind-numbing, and I would dare to say spiritually killing, is where we talk about a thing and don't do anything about it and make no changes. There's a deadness about that, and strangely a separation from the world that is not the right separation from the world, It is a separation from the world where we are in fact not able to subdue the world. We're not able to change the situation. And of course God has called us to subdue the world and to in fact bring it under His will. And as He said to Adam and Eve, to keep the garden, to keep it neat and tidy and in order and developing and growing the way He had planned. But in a sense, what we fall into as we die more and more to Him and die more and more to each other and cease increasingly to feel what the other feels, we actually slip into a deadness and an inactivity and an inability to deal with the practical circumstances that surround us. Whereas, of course, in Him, the opposite is true. There is a living, sensitive awareness of each other, an interest in each other's mind, a desire to know, what does that really person really think? What are they really feeling? What do they really understand? And then talking that together so that you come to a decision and a conclusion that you then help each other to fulfill and to implement. So it is interesting, and it all ties together with God's commission to us. So let nothing that comes out of your mouth be corrupt, you know. Let nothing be such as brings death to another person, but let everything transmit grace to the other person so that you build them up. And I think it's a great opportunity for us. Haven't said anything of what I planned to say, but